Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman Podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Schmidt. I was trained in Western medicine as a physician assistant where I was exposed to the dark side of medicine. Through self-education and biohacking, I figured out ways to hack my system, becoming a better version of myself. We'll explore the wisdom and insight of my findings with each episode of the Becoming Superhuman Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Becoming Superhuman Podcast. We're here with our resident teacher for the second episode now, Mr. Dale Halaway, who is a master transformational teacher, life and business strategic advisor, as well as a success coach and author. And what a coincidence, we're speaking about success today. So, Dale, how you doing? Welcome back.
Very good. Thank you, Trevor. Very nice.
So, now we did this last episode, and we talked a lot about the awakening and how people are becoming more conscious and aware and expanding their consciousness. And today we want to talk about success. So what does success mean?
Well, first of all, with individuals, it's very important that the individual come up with their own personalized definition. So, whenever I give one of my success trainings, we've got 100 people in the room, let's say, and if I was to go around the room and ask for the definition of success personally, you can almost be assured I'm going to get 70 different answers of those 100 people.
Right.
It really is quite amazing.
Right.
But to that, there's also commonality. So, and the commonality has to do with, success is something that I identify, and then I achieve or I accomplish, and then it does something magical for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, meaning or implying that whatever the success is in whatever area of our life we're exploring, or examining or wanting to move towards, it's really important that that success be meaningful to us. So one of my classes or part of my body of work around success is what I call soul success.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the reason why I came up with that 20 plus years ago, because I'd already been teaching for 25 years prior to that. I've been teaching for 46 years now. Right? And so what I learned is in that first 20-year period or 25-year period is that success can be very fulfilling, and it can also be unfulfilling.
How so?
Well, people are basically walking an incorrect path.
Okay, so it's like the success that they chose was not actually what they were supposed to be doing.
No, I'll give you an example of that. I remember I was on the East Coast and I was doing a big customized seminar for a fairly large company, and there's like 400 or 500 people in the room, and this was one of the topics, and I have a number of exercises as a way to pull stuff out of your psyche, pull stuff out of your subconscious. You're not even aware that's even there.
Right.
And so we're going through these exercises, and there was a man in the audience. He was, I don't know, maybe 44 years of age, and all of a sudden he just lost it, and he couldn't even control himself. He was a big, football player kind of guy, right? So nobody wanted to mess with him because clearly he had a real strong physical energy about him, but he didn't know what was happening, and he got really scared. And what was happening, he started getting all these images, and of course, what was really going on, we unlocked something around a set of memories that got buried in his subconscious, loaded with all kinds of emotion, mainly anger and rage, around this.
Okay.
His parents, who were doctors, were convinced that he needed to be a doctor. So, and this is kind of common too, parents have done this, where they project their dream that they didn't fully resolve onto one of their kids. Then the kid, because when the kid's really impressionable, takes on the dream as if it's its own. And if it's its own, that's a great thing. But if the kid takes on the dream that really belongs to somebody else, what that means, Trevor, is the dream that they came into this life to ultimately achieve or succeed with, it gets suppressed. It gets buried deep into the psyche or the subconscious to the point where it gets completely forgotten about. So now in the case of this man who was 44 at the time, he had spent 20 years of his life moving towards becoming a doctor. He's now a doctor, but he's not a happy doctor.
Right.
But yet he's a doctor, he's making really decent money, And so he thinks this is what's expected of him and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
In this seminar, it was like a 5-day long class, personalized for this particular company, whatever day it was, day 3 or day 4, when this unlocked and he became filled with rage, right? The rage that was sitting inside of him around this thing that had been done when he was a younger man. He took on the dream of somebody else. And so therefore, here he is 44 years of age. And that word unfulfilled, like, so when I move in, for example, and we're really probing on your goals, on your dreams, like what's right for you at soul level,
right,
not egoic level.
Right.
If your goals are being pursued from the perspective of your ego, not that it's bad, but no matter how you cut it, you'll never be fulfilled.
Right.
The way we become fulfilled in achieving one of our goals or succeeding with one of our goals is the goal being inspired from that of our soul, the higher, greater part of us.
Right.
And if it is, one of the gauges on the dashboard is this. You not only will you achieve whatever you're setting yourself up to achieve, so whatever the dream is or the higher aspiration is for that individual, if that's lined up with their soul self, and then they come into that last phase where they're now achieving it, one of the ways on how you recognize it, it is so immensely fulfilling. We call it in the class, it fills your heart space up with real good, pristine energy. Like you will feel amazing.
Right.
Versus people who go after a goal, they achieve the goal and they don't get that amazing feeling.
Right.
In fact, many of them, and this is what I learned in that first 25-year period of my teaching career, because I'd work with people on their goals back then a lot, and many of them would say, but what is this thing? Like I work so freaking hard to achieve this thing, and next thing you know, I go ahead and I achieve it, but I feel empty.
Right.
Like, is this what it is?
Right.
Gosh, I wish I would have known that 13 years ago when I started this journey to achieve whatever it is that I've now achieved.
Right.
This doesn't feel good to me. I mean, it's okay, but I thought it was going to be something else.
Right.
That I could write a book on, story after story after. I mean, I'm talking about fairly successful people, both men and women, of all ages,
right,
of all nationalities. I would hear it over and over and over, especially when we were in more of a process mode, transformationally speaking, and I was helping them to dig this stuff up that's been buried inside of them.
Right.
So they could become free of that. And ultimately, so now coming back to the success and the definition of success, one of the definitions is this, is the success that you're in process of achieving, is it filling you up with good energy? Is it making you a better person?
Right.
Is it causing you to go deeper into relationship with yourself and developing a better, healthier, more vibrant relationship with you? Because if it is, you've just struck gold.
Right.
If it's not, you're moving away from your own gold mine.
Yeah, I can imagine there's lots of people that followed someone else's dream. I know as a parent myself, I think it's natural to want our kids to follow in somewhat of our path. And I have a son that has made different choices than myself, and I naturally get the feeling like that this is wrong, but it's not wrong for me. It's different than what I would have done, and I try not to place that judgment on him and give him the ability to make his own choices in life. But I see this, that it would be easy for me to say, no, you're doing the wrong thing. You shouldn't be doing this. You should do this. It would be easy for me to say that, but I've chosen not to.
This is such a good point, because many years ago, some of my students came to me and asked me if I would put together a course or a seminar, a class on parenting. Because that was a big struggle, at least back, I think it still is to this day.
It's always
a big struggle. And the classic people say, like, gosh, all of a sudden I'm dropped into parenting, where's the instruction manual?
Right.
That's another thing I've heard like hundreds of times over and over again from parents, and including myself when I was younger as a parent. And like, where is the manual? Like, why didn't I get one of these? I'm really kind of in over my head. I don't tell anybody that. I keep that all to myself. But when I go to bed at night, I'm thinking, God, am I doing it correctly here? God, I don't want to mess up my child.
Right.
I want to be able to support him or her in a way that really causes them to have a phenomenal life. Right? And so, but I didn't know what I was doing either. This was back in my 20s.
Right.
So anyhow, a number of years back, I had a group of my students at the time who approached me and asked me, because I would constantly somehow reference parenting to what I was teaching, especially with the subconscious or the inner child.
Mm-hmm.
People would say, can you create a course for us, or a seminar for us, or a curriculum for us? Because it would really help us. So I did. And so we did the course over a period of 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Right? 6 weeks. And it was like an evening course for like 3 or 4 hours long every week for 6 consecutive weeks. Became, at the time, one of my most popular classes, and well attended. People just flocked to us like bees to honey.
Right.
It was amazing once we put it out there. And so this became one of the issues. Parents did not know anything about energy transference. At that time, it was a foreign concept.
Right.
They didn't know what it was. And energy transference as a teaching has been around for at least 40 years, right? But they did not know what it was. And even to this day, when I start teaching that, I'll still have parents, what are you talking about? You're speaking a foreign language to me right now. I don't even know.
Right.
Well, this transference happens especially when you're parenting your child, because your child is like a sponge. They're 100% impressionable to that of mom and dad,
Right.
or aunt and uncle, or grandma and grandpa, or their older siblings. In fact, they don't have the ability, when they're younger, to defend, to ward off. So whatever the parent transfers, in light of what we're talking about here now with the dream thing, right? If the parent is not aware of this, and all of a sudden, somehow, some way, they lock on to the psyche of their child, and they have this need because they want their child to be like them. Very seldom a great strategy.
Right.
I get it's a strategy, but it's not the better one. The better strategy is first to recognize when you're doing this, but then you got to decide, okay, is this what I want to continue to do? Because my child is very unique. And even though I would maybe like my child to be more like me, or more like the mother or the grandfather, the grandmother, whatever, and that could very well be. But ultimately, if we're going to help that child to be a happy adult later on in life, it's so critically important that we recognize the child at soul level is coming in with their own unique blueprint, as in a soul blueprint. And if the parent doesn't know what that is, then likely the parent's going to transfer their so-called dream, and more specifically, their unrealized dream,
Right.
onto the psyche of their child.
So is that where like I had a dream to do something, and I have worked hard towards it, but I never really accomplished it. So now I'm passing it on to my child and saying, this is what you should be doing, because I never accomplished it, and now I want you to do it. Is that kind of how that works?
That's one of the ways and how it can play out.
Okay.
One of the many ways.
Right.
And then later on in life, the child, because the child wants to impress you,
Right.
child wants to respect you.
Wants
the child,
you to be proud.
He wants
right?
he wants you to be proud of him or
Right.
her. So clearly they're looking for you to give them guidance, so you can be proud of them,
Right.
because they want to do you well.
Right.
That's just natural to at least most children, right? Unless they get really messed up in the early stages of their life, or they're possibly carrying over something from a previous time.
Right.
Because that's another possibility too.
Right.
It might be a previous carryover at soul level. If it is, and obviously it would serve really well to identify that
Right.
too. But from the parent's perspective, in this parenting class that I designed, now today, whenever we do a parenting class, we call it conscious, responsible parenting, right? And there's an art to this. In fact, there's a mastery to this.
Yeah.
And it is the instruction manual.
That's awesome.
It's so powerful that we get young parents
Uh-huh.
who are in their maybe late 20s, early 30s, which that's what gets me really excited, because the damage hasn't been created yet.
Right.
So it gives us the opportunity to basically help them to rewire and really have access to a healthy instruction manual on how to better raise their children.
Right. So we've talked about success now. Obviously most parents want their kids to be successful, and so we do everything that we can to help them and support them and guide them. So once the kids come out of being kids and they're into the early adulthood, how do they identify what success means to them?
Well, again, it depends on their parenting. So if the parenting was really rich in teaching, guiding the child to have success that's rightfully correct for them, meaning the type of success is going to be meaningful, it's going to elevate them, it's going to empower them. Again, it's got to be very unique to them, just like it's got to be unique to you, it's got to be unique to me, it's got to be unique to all of us, quite frankly.
Right.
That's that unique, I call it the soul's signature of success. Because with the thousands of people that I've worked with, really worked with our sleeves rolled up, and we go to work for like a year at a time, that's what we end up identifying. What is the signature? Because your soul, believe it or not, just like you have that signature, handwritten-wise, your soul also has an energetic signature. That makes it very unique. That's what we call it the blueprint. Right? It's a blueprint that your soul's coming in with. But what often happens, because of lack of good parenting or responsible parenting or mature parenting, conscious parenting, then a monkey wrench can get thrown into things. Next thing you know, the child becomes disconnected from that blueprint.
Right.
They become disconnected from their soul. They start living their life more egoically. Right? It's a very common thing.
Right.
This is nothing, at least in my world, nothing unusual, far from it. However, what now happens is, depending on that parenting, so if the parent understands kind of like what we're starting to kind of tap into here a little bit, and more specifically is becoming the embodiment of this, if that's the case, that in itself is going to be a game changer when it comes to parenting your child. Because now in parenting your child's going to get a little better, a bigger blessing from the parent, and the blessing is going to be is to set the child up for a successful life.
Right.
Whereas in the most cases, up until at least now, or most recently, children are not set up for a successful life.
Right.
They're set up for the opposite.
Right.
Believe it or not.
Yeah.
And you see it with the majority of people. It doesn't
Right.
take a rocket scientist, I think, to figure that one out. Right? So, but if the parent is on board, in light of what we're talking about, then the parent can do things to help set the child up for success. If the child has been set up for meaningful success, I'll refer to it as, in terms of a definition of success. So success must be meaningful to the individual as a definition.
Right.
So you might say success is the type of success, say on a financial level, is to have $1 million a year income. But your next door neighbor I could care less.
Right.
As long as I'm making enough to take care of me and my family, and a little extra where I don't have to worry about where I'm going to get the money to pay my bills so I can live the kind of lifestyle I want to live, that's my definition.
Right.
And that ought to be okay too, you see. So whatever that definition is to your child, if that's been communicated successfully or effectively in your parental style, now the child's been set up for success, the type of success that becomes meaningful. So now he's 26 years of age, coming out of UNLV or some university or college. He's ready to go into the workforce. He's ready to start having deeper, more committed relationships possibly, and ready to start making some good money and create at least some kind of a financial well-being, state of well-being for him or herself. Well, if they've been set up for success, then you'll see it because it's like a rocket ship. They've now got the launching pad. Right? And so then from there, if that person, say, was to come into a success-oriented training or a success-oriented seminar with somebody who really knows what they're doing, it could literally become like a rocket ship. Because now he's got a good foundation of success principles that he really learned well from his mom or dad or grandfather or grandmother. And so now he comes across a really top-notch success coach who really knows what they're doing, and now you can level them up rather quickly. But here's the catch. If the foundation's not there, you can still level them up, but before you can level anybody up, you got to get the foundation in place. I call it footing underneath you. Right? And if you don't have the right footing underneath you, I'm talking about physical now, practical now, a footing energetically underneath your feet. Where you're grounded, and you're anchored well to be able to create success, whatever that is that's meaningful or going to be fulfilling for you, then you can do that. But if you don't have the foundation, Trevor, if you don't have the footing underneath you, then that person goes down a very different path.
So when we talk about foundation, what's that foundation? How do you get that in place?
Good question. So the foundation has a lot to do with how you live your life, like day to day. Not in the world of fantasy. Like somebody starts to visualize, for example, what is it they want. And there's a trap there where you can take your visualizations into a world of fantasy. In other words, it's not grounded.
Right.
So, and you'll see this with people constantly. They say they know what they want, and they say they visualize it, and they can see themselves having it, and yet they still don't have it.
Right.
And 9 years have passed.
Right.
Something's off. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, something's off, right? We have a lot of those types of people, right? And what I have found in my work with many is that they don't have a good foundation. And without the foundation, you don't have the right anchor. Without the right anchor, you're not rooted properly. How do you root? You got to break it down, literally, into the way you're living your life. So success at its best is the way you live. So
when you say the way you live, what do you mean by that?
You live success. So success, depending on the type of success that you're after, whatever that type is, right? It comes with a set of habits. And just like your dreams are unique to you at soul level, whatever that is, like we just talked about, the habits to the type of success you wish to have or you intend to create are very unique to that level of success.
Right.
So if it's relationship success, for example, the habits in relationship success are going to be very different than the habits. Well, there might be a crossover a little bit, but for the most part, there's going to be a different type of set of habits that need to be developed if you want financial success.
Right.
Or you want career success. Or you want a promotion.
Right.
I've helped a lot of people get promoted to executive VP, let's say, in a company. They love their company, they love their boss or the president of the company, but they've been struggling. They want to rise up to the VP position. And they've missed out on 2 opportunities now over a period of 10 years.
Right.
And then somehow, some way, they come across my path. It's usually because the president of the company or the CEO of the company finds me and says, I'd like to have you come into my company and work with us for a year.
Right.
So I go into their company, and all of a sudden, somebody, could be anybody, right, male or female, approaches me in one of their coaching sessions they have with me, success-wise, and next thing you know, we're identifying this dream they have where they want to become the VP of the company. And they've wanted to become the VP of the company for the last 11 and a half years.
Right.
So I'll start probing them and asking, like, what's happened here? Like 11 and a half years, that's a pretty good chunk of time. And so, and eventually what we identified, they're struggling around the exact same thing. They're still like the manager of like a little branch in the company.
Right.
And we'll identify exactly where they got stuck in it. Because I'm also able to read timelines. So I can go back into past timelines with a little bit of help from you where I probe you strategically. That's what strategic advising, or at least in my world, that's part of what it is.
Right.
When I'm strategically advising somebody, I'm also getting a feel for your timelines. Like the stuff that we need to correct, the stuff we need to heal, the stuff we need to resolve or let go. We got to go back into the timeline. Like, where did you create this from?
Right.
If we're going to ultimately to discard that, or not discard it, but to discreate it.
Right.
Right? And so there's a way to do this. So, but now the person says, no, I've wanted to be VP for the last 11 and a half years. And I'll ask, well, is there anybody else come before you that was VP? He said, yeah, there's been 2 different people that got promoted to that position. And somehow I get considered, but I don't get the job.
Right.
And so most people will tell me that's been a painful thing for them because it's something that they genuinely have a desire for. Bottom line is we figure it out, and next thing you know, as soon as the opportunity opens, guess what?
They move into the position.
They move into the position naturally, organically.
So does that mean, so when you talk about like habits and stuff, can you put this in the tangible format? So this gentleman here, what would he have been doing to create the foundation that would allow him to move into that position?
Well, one of the things was the way he started his day. He started his day with too much drama. Constantly putting out fires.
Right.
So by the time he got into the office, he was already away from his center. he would tell me, I learned this as a result of spending a fair amount of time with him, he would tell me that he would come to the office and like disoriented. And many times it would take him an hour to 2 hours just to get stable or centered back in his chair. He would call it the chair,
Right.
back in his chair as the manager of his department.
Right.
Now, he didn't tell anybody that. In fact, he also developed a fear around that somebody was going to find out what was really going on. That he was literally coming onto the payroll, into his office, at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and the better part of the first couple hours, he had to find a way to kind of put himself back together.
Right.
And yet still make it look like he was being productive. When in fact, we'll just say he was maybe only 30% productive of what he could have been.
Right.
Because this all takes energy.
Right.
And then if you've got fear backing that up, like now you're afraid your boss is going to find out, what does that imply?
Right.
You might be let go of.
Right.
Well, that's the last thing I want to have happen. I want to get promoted. Right? And so once we identified that, so whenever, at least I go in to help create a unique set of habits that are 100% in support and complementary to the type of success that you want to have in that specific area of your life. So in the case of this gentleman, right, first thing is to identify the poor habits. Because for him, he wanted more success in his career.
Right.
That's what he identified. He didn't talk about his relationship, at least just yet. He didn't talk about his relationships yet.
Right.
He wanted success in his career. He was very clear on that. That was a priority item for him. So that's what we went after. But in that, once we identify what the area is you'd like to be more successful, or you've been struggling towards, in other words, you really want to be successful in that area, but it seems to elude you.
Right.
You never seem to get there.
Right.
And 11 and a half years pass. So the first step is you've got to identify an incorrect habit, a misaligned habit, a habit that's actually keeping you away from your success.
Right.
In this case, I just articulated the habit. Once we did that, then we needed to clear out that habit. And part of the clearing out that habit, we needed to have a new direction. So we identified a better habit, shall we say, or also known as a habit that was in alignment with the type of success that he wanted to rise up to in his corporate job, along his career path. And that had to do with the way he started his day.
Right.
So, and you probably already know this because you've been very successful in business. You've got a beautiful relationship. The way you start your day determines what happens later on in the day. For all of us.
Yep.
In that first 60-minute, I call it the golden hour. Actually, it goes back even further. It goes back to how you went to bed last night. Right, we can get pretty deep on that. But you asked the question. So first we identified the incorrect habit, the misaligned habit. We began the process of clearing it. In that process of clearing it, we identified the correct habit, the habit that would be in alignment with the success he wanted. And in this case, then I helped him craft the right habit, and then basically gently and consistently held him accountable until the habit went into place, which takes approximately 60 days, not 21.
Right.
That old teaching of 21 days, it's hogwash.
Yeah, I agree.
It does not, no. I don't know of anybody that pulled it off in 21 days.
Right.
Yet I know a lot of people who pulled it off in 60 consecutive days.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, what I'm kind of hearing is that, and I've had this thought process before, where in order to achieve what we want, you have to have this, I call it like congruence. You need to be in congruence with your thought process, with your beliefs, but more importantly with your actions. So people do this all the time, where they're saying, I want this goal, and but yet they believe that they're not good enough to reach that, so that's out of congruence. And but then furthermore, their actions that they actually do are not in congruence with achieving that goal, and so then you can't imagine that would ever work out.
No, because the actions that you just highlighted are more congruent with them believing they don't deserve this.
Right. So even though they keep saying, I want to achieve, I want this, I want to make more money, I want to have a better relationship, if they don't actually do the things that are necessary in order to get that result, then they're never going to get the result.
And that'll go on for months or years or even decades, maybe even for the rest of the person's life. They might even die that way.
Right.
Struggling.
Yep.
And eventually giving up.
Right.
Which in my view that's the most painful thing, to actually give up on yourself.
Yeah.
To give up on your greater, especially your soul dreams. your soul goals.
Right.
To give up on that is some painful stuff. And it doesn't have to be that way. We now have we maybe don't have a lot of people yet, because this kind of stuff is not taught in college, it's not taught in school, it's not taught in university, right? You've got to seek it out. You've got to find a teacher. I talked about this in my first book, Being Called to Change, right? One of the things is, if you want to really level up, go study people who level up.
Right.
Do you know of anybody who didn't go get a coach, who didn't go get a mentor, who didn't go get a teacher? Do you know of anybody?
Right.
That seriously levels up, right? Especially in an authentic way. In other words, they're the real deal. Every single one of them will go and pay anywhere from thousands of dollars to tens of thousands of dollars to, quite frankly, millions of dollars.
Right.
Because there's so much power in having somebody in your corner that's further along than you are. They're not better than you, they're not lesser than you, but they are further along. And this thing of yes, we are equal, but on a practical level, we've also got to be somewhat realistic. Right? If I want to be successful in this area of my life, let's say I want to have a real successful relationship with my lifelong partner, I could have that. But how many people do I know in my life right now who actually have had that?
Right.
And do they know how to teach it?
Right.
Do they know how to coach it? Because
Right.
you might have it, but you don't know how to teach it or coach it. So you need the combination. So when you're in the presence of what I would refer to as a serious, authentic teacher. An authentic teacher is somebody who's gone ahead, somebody who's been in the ditch.
Right.
It's somebody who has gained all of this experience, not head stuff, not just conceptual stuff or intellectual stuff.
Right.
They've embodied.
Yep.
And in my view, the marker of the most authentic teacher or mentor or guide or transformational coach or whatever that might be is somebody who's embodied what it is that they're teaching others how to do. You get that combination going in your corner, and you really are sincere about wanting to become more successful, you've got a phenomenal combination now to really win.
Yeah, it's definitely important, you use the words embodiment, and you have to become that which you desire,
Yes.
And a lot of people, it's like, I think in our society they call it, fake until you make it, and these people will pretend to be something until the hope is that they eventually become. But in my experience, you just have to be, you just have to do. And if you say you want to be a successful person, then you have to do all the things that successful person should be doing.
I've rubbed shoulders with some very successful people at this point along my life's journey. And a lot of them I've mentored and taught and coached and so on and so forth. Incredible people. I'm talking now successful people, very successful people. And so whenever I'm around them, we get talking about success. It's never this conversation that, no, now that I'm successful, this is how I live. That's where that teaching comes from. That's how I got that teaching.
Right.
Success, you've got to live the success you desire. And you live the success you desire, not when you get the success. That's the no-brainer. Anybody can do that.
Right.
It's, can you do it before you get the success?
Right.
It's like, can you live your life in a way, successfully wise, where you're acting as if you already have the success.
Right.
And if you can, you've just struck gold. And I know that beyond a fact, not just in my own personal life and the success that I've enjoyed, but you're nodding your head up and down. I know you know it as well. And I could name off quite easily people you probably know that I've worked with that are a little bit on the more public side, and you'd be surprised to know they started living that way long before they actually achieved the success, whether it's their happy marriage or raising awesome kids, or it's a certain financial status or a career status or even a health status.
Right.
I mean, you can explore any aspect of your life, and that's why I refer to it as such. Is you're choosing to live the success, and you live the success by the habit of success that you want to create. The habit is also equivalent to the action.
Right.
Right? So when the action, I call it aligned action. I'm writing my third book right now. We're almost done. It's going to release sometime in the fall. And one of the things, there's a whole subchapter in there on what I call aligned action. And the reason why it's in there, because again, I've been in front of thousands upon thousands of people now. I'm absolutely flabbergasted at how few people even know what an aligned action really means. And in all fairness, they've never been taught it.
Right.
So it hasn't entered into their consciousness yet.
Right.
But once they get taught it, it lights them up like a Christmas tree because it's so authentically empowering. When you really know what an aligned action is and you're willing to discipline yourself, and it's going to require discipline, as you know,
Right.
to discipline yourself in a consistent way. That's, again, living successfully prior to you becoming successful.
Right.
You've got to be able to do it now. And that's why I often say whenever I work with people, whether I'm in front of an audience or a group of people that are working together for like a curriculum, like a period of time, like in that parenting class for 6 weeks kind of thing, or on a one-to-one, is I see it all the time. As I learn about you on a practical level, how you live your life, I can tell you all kinds of things about you, like what's actually going on inside,
Right.
based on the way you show up today.
Right.
All you got to do is let me hang out with you for a little bit,
Right.
and I'll spot things that the average person on their best days could never spot.
Yeah.
But I'm trained to do this. I've been doing this for a long, long time. So.
You know, the interesting thing, I have a 14-year-old son now, and he's compelled. He wants to make money because he has a desire for an object. He wants an expensive bike.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, you got to, if you want this, electric bike that goes 60 miles per hour, you got to work for it, right?
Yeah.
So you got to work for it, and you got to earn it.
Yes.
And I'll help you out. I'll provide opportunities for you, but you got to get off your butt and do.
Yes.
And so he's actually thinking now that he's only focused on getting the money, and he's only thinking of like what he could do, the actual actions that he can do to get the money, and he's only thinking about really the money part of it. And I'm like, you got to do the actions first. Nobody's going to pay you first, then you expect you to fulfill. It just doesn't work that way. So you have to do the stuff first, and if you do it well, I'll pay you more. Because you're my son, I want to help you out. But if you're going to do a half-assed job, then you're not going to be able to achieve what you want. And so I think that is an analogy of what a lot of people in this world think about. They have these dreams of these materialistic gains that they want, and they want to achieve them, but they're not really willing to do all the things that are necessary in order to get to that point.
It's one of the things, remember the movie The Secret?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that became a mega block bestseller. Bob Proctor, who was the star teacher in there, who was my earlier mentor from back when I was a young man.
Right.
So I know him quite well. An amazing human being, quite frankly. He's no longer with us anymore. But I remember, and even though he was the star, and he was a little bummed because the movie didn't tell the whole story. They left out very specific, important pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Or it got edited out, as he would say, because all of them were interviewed at length. Right. And obviously Rhonda had to make a decision on what to keep in, what to let go, because she had so much footage.
Right.
In all fairness to her, she's another amazing being too. But the reality is, it put people on kind of a little bit of a pathway that basically the message was, I think if I get myself a nice sofa chair, and I just learn how to sit still in my chair and visualize,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be one of the most successful dudes or dudettes on planet Earth.
Right.
In other words, we missed out on the action part.
Mm-hmm.
And if we miss out on the action part, as you so wonderfully just shared, if we miss out on that, that means we never get the experience.
Right.
And if we don't get the experience, then even if you have access to a higher teaching, the higher teaching just stays in the world of concept for you.
Right.
It never becomes embodied.
Right.
It never becomes earned.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So how cool is this that your 14-year-old boy has a dad like you that's willing to have these types of conversations with him?
Mm-hmm.
Because the other piece is our kids, they're being exposed to things right now that you and I, when we were kids, we were not exposed to.
I know.
And one of these things that's happening is our kids are becoming like entitled.
Right.
Which really means they can get, so to speak, but they don't have to do anything for it.
Right.
That somehow the world owes them.
Right.
Well, I'm sure you grew up in this world that we got the message, that would be a good message to get early in the game, that that's not the way it works.
Right.
The world doesn't owe us anything.
Right.
Nothing. Zero.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, the best of what we become that, we achieve that because we've actually earned it.
Mm-hmm.
The value in the earning of it, that's what gets us the experience.
Right.
That then gets embodied in the cells that make up our form, our
Right.
physical form. And once we have that, we get to have that forever.
Right.
That's never ever taken away from us. Whereas with our kids today, a lot of them are not even getting blessed with this experience of earning,
Yep.
so that the experience can register in them at a cellular structure,
Mm-hmm.
which means that even if by chance they get a little bit of success, here's another area we could possibly talk about today, and that's the art of sabotaging one's success in their world.
Right.
Because that I've seen 100 times over as well
Right.
in my professional life with all kinds of people that have sabotaged some pretty interesting things in their world that on their better days they would never even think of sabotaging
Right.
because they value that so much. And yet when we start to sabotage something, the person that's in process of sabotaging is the last one to get the memo that they're actually sabotaging.
Yeah.
Their wife or their husband, their best friend, their coach, their mentor, their boss, an employee, maybe one of their kids, or maybe a parental figure, notices it before they do.
Right.
Like, oh my gosh, Dale, like, you're changing, but you're not changing towards the better. Like, something's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what I see is you're possibly destroying what it is you already have. No, I'm not. I got everything under control.
Mm-hmm.
And again, ego,
Right.
right? Being very egoic, just not knowing that I've temporarily lost consciousness around my own ego.
Mm-hmm.
And how my own ego is influencing me somehow, some way, by pulling something up from within me that's not healed yet, that it's using as a way to get me to engage in some form of self-sabotaging behavior.
Right. You know, one of the things that the lessons I like to teach is, you know, it's not what we get. It's not what we get out of the things that we do, but it's what we become
Yeah.
because of what we do.
Yes.
And so I think that so many people are so focused on this, you know, the materialistic gains and the money or whatever the case, that they don't realize that the experience that they got allowed them to develop their mind, develop their muscles, develop whatever it is that they developed to allow them to become the person that deserves whatever the gain they're getting. You know, because if they don't deserve it, then they'll get it and it'll be short-lived.
Because they'll sabotage it. They'll
Right.
unconsciously, subconsciously sabotage it because they don't deserve it.
Right.
Or they don't believe in themselves enough.
Right.
Or they believe they've done something wrong way back when, but they don't know what it is they've done wrong, but that's what they're holding in their lower consciousness.
Right.
And if that doesn't get identified and it's strong enough, then you can come in and throw a monkey wrench.
So
into
would
the
was
process.
this self-sabotage, would that be due to the, like, you know, the incongruence of their thought process? So like, I want this, but I don't believe I can get it. And so that incongruence or that belief that I'm not good enough or I'm not strong enough or I want to do this and I'm taking action, but I don't really believe it's possible.
Right, exactly. So therefore, I don't have both feet in the action.
Right.
I have 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Right.
Meanwhile, my thoughts are reflecting back to me what it is I really believe inside,
Mm-hmm.
or where it is I'm stuck inside, or where it is inside that I feel I deserve. Believe it or not, you'd be amazed how many people inside feel they deserve to be punished.
Right.
They deserve to be held back.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they just simply, remember we were talking about lower energy patterns in the last episode
Mm-hmm.
on the awakening, they could very well have a lower energy pattern that basically says that whenever they get close to some level of success, they've got to shut it down because the lower energy pattern says you've got to protect yourself at all costs from ever getting hurt.
Right.
Well, in life, you know, we always get hurt.
Right.
In life, if we're going to grow, you're going to have growing pains.
Right.
Just like when your physical body, when you were younger, you had to go through growing pains.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're going through growing pains, unless you numbed yourself down with some drug, even if the drug was a bunch of candy,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
But the bottom line is your body had to go through those growing pains in order to grow.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing in life. If my success right now is this, and I want my success to be this, in other words, greater than what I've experienced before, in order for me to go here, to be able to go here, I'm going to go through some growing pains.
Right.
There is no such thing as this is going to be comfortable.
Right. I mean, you have to do something different, right? If you want different results, you have to do something
And
different.
it's going to challenge you. It's going to activate you, like we were talking about the last episode. It's going to bring up one of your shadow aspects. It's possibly going to put you in confrontation with your own ego. I mean, it can do all kinds of things. There's not this easy road.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
That's what people want, though.
Oh, I know, and then some people get addicted to it.
Right.
They get downright addicted because they're in this false, that would be a false belief,
Right.
or a false perception, a distorted perception, right, where they're perceiving how it really goes incorrectly. Again, it's like going back to the people that came across the movie The Secret. A lot of them came out on the other side. They thought they had it all worked out, but they were misperceiving. They just didn't know they were misperceiving.
Right.
And then eventually someone like Bob comes along, and eventually he acknowledges publicly, he acknowledged some real good stuff was left out.
Right.
You know? And so, they didn't get the whole picture. They didn't get the whole secret.
Right.
They got a part of the secret. But to that, there were other parts of that secret. And it is kind of a secret because most people have been kind of kept away from this,
Right.
so to speak, until you find somebody or find something as in a program that can teach you and help to crack you open and crack you open to the greater truth and more specifically then to be able to help to empower you so you can start to discipline yourself
Right.
to live the life that you really want to have, start acting as if you already are that person that you need to become, but start doing it now.
Right.
Versus waiting until you become it, because if you're waiting until you become it, you're never gonna have it.
Right.
It's not gonna work. And if by chance you do get it, it'll just be a taste. That's where the sabotage will come into play.
Right.
Because you will not feel worthy, you will not feel at one with that of what you've now become. And we can see this in people who win a lot of money or inherit a lot of money. You probably know what the stats are, the most current stats.
To lose it all.
I mean, it's alarming.
Yeah.
It's alarming. On average, anybody that wins or comes into easy money, 100,000 or above, within 3 years will go bust. 83%.
Do you think that's the reason why, like, professional athletes, that they come in, do you think they're self-sabotaging or they don't deserve it? Like they say, the football players, for example, they come in, their career in professional football is at most like 3 years for most of these individuals, but they get a bunch of money up front and then they go blow it all, then 3 years goes by and they end up having nothing left at the end. What's your thoughts on why that tends to happen?
Well, I just want to add to that too. While they're blowing all that money in 3 years, they also destroy some part of their life.
Right.
They do something that's seriously self-sabotaging.
Right.
That might even put them in jail.
Right.
So it's important to recognize here as well. But how does that happen? Well, again, too much too fast. So in this case, they didn't become it. In this case, they weren't living the success that they were about to be so-called blessed with, touched with. They weren't living it yet. In other words, they don't have the lifestyle down.
Right.
In fact, they probably don't know what the lifestyle even is.
Right.
I think of Britney Spears, right? I mean, just imagine this gal, the relationship she's had with her father, which has all been public now. Everybody, I'm sure, knows what that's been like, how dysfunctional, how disempowering, how disconnecting that was, or still is for that matter. And all of a sudden, she rises to stardom like she's one of those celebrities. It's amazing that woman's even still alive. Because a lot of them will OD.
Right.
Because they start using their money to go buy the most expensive cocaine.
Right.
And you've heard this, we've all heard the stories. And they OD at a very young age. Well, what are they doing? They're sabotaging their life. Why would they be sabotaging their life? Because they cannot, for the life of them, maintain, hold on to the frequency, the higher frequency of the overwhelming amount of success that they're currently living.
Right.
There was never no preparation time. It didn't exist.
Right.
It came on too fast. Unless, of course, they had, Matthew McConaughey, he talks about this with his parents. he had a real unique set, like an awesome set of parents.
Mm-hmm.
They set him and his brothers up for a more successful life.
Right.
And Matthew, you know, I never met Matthew, but one of my dearest friends who's no longer with us was very close to Matthew, so I know a fair amount about Matthew. Again, another great human being, but he already had a running start when he came into Hollywood.
Right.
Where a lot of them, they don't have this running start. They've still got they got a dysfunctional relationship with mom or dad, hasn't been healed yet. So how could they have success, like as a foundation underneath them?
Right.
They don't, and yet all of a sudden in 2 years they have this amazing amount of success. How do you hold on to that? It's
tough, right?
Tough.
Yeah.
You haven't earned it, at least in this life. You haven't earned it. You haven't developed the foundation that one needs to have. I always say with success, okay, so once we identify the kind of success you want, my next part of my process with people is, let's take a look at your foundation. You know what most people do when I do that? They're like, foundation? What are you talking about? Foundation for my house? It's never dawned on them.
Right.
They don't even know what a foundation is.
Right.
Like energetically speaking. And so then, obviously, now they're going to learn about it. And as they learn about it, of course, they all say the same thing. God, why wasn't I taught this by my parents? Why wasn't I taught this in school?
Right.
This all makes so much good sense. Of course it does.
Right.
Because if I'm going to go for that greater level of success and be able to sustain it, not this idea of going to this greater level of success without doing the work necessary, and then find yourself sabotaging that success, it can be deadly.
Right.
I mean, people have committed suicide.
Right. It's confusing.
It's like, it's too much pressure.
Right.
Because success carries a frequency. So, you know, I teach this on the different levels of consciousness of success. And there's a handful of them. And to go from the bottom level to the highest level in 3 years, in my view, as a man, as a spiritual being, as a teacher, as a coach and mentor for many, that is absolutely, it's almost like suicide.
Right.
Might be unconscious suicide. It's ridiculous.
Right.
It's too much too fast. That'd be like going into the gym and you've never benched 150 pounds before and you're struggling at 140 and all of a sudden you decide, I'm going to double this in the next 30 days. Yeah, you're probably going to what to one of your muscles?
Right.
You're going to tear them.
Yeah.
And you're going to be possibly even bedridden for a while.
Yeah.
Right?
So I get this thought while you're talking about, you know, like you could say, I want to be the president of the United States, but then you never went through the process of, you know, I would imagine to become a president, you'd have to get your degree, you'd have to get into some type of politics, whether that's at the local government and kind of learning from that stuff, then you move up to the next level and the next level. And, you know, I mean, you wouldn't just graduate college and then become president of the United States. And even if you did, you wouldn't know what to do. Right? So I think what I'm hearing is that you need to prepare for the role that you wish to fill later in life. You know, so your success that you want to achieve, you have to do all the work to get to that point, or else once you get there, you're not going to know how the vehicle runs, essentially.
Yeah, no, you're really aware. You're really dialed in. That's, again, another great thing to say or a great question to even ask. I think about one of my corporate clients, CEO, his name was Ellen, from years ago. He's no longer with us anymore. And but he was running 2 companies as a CEO. He had a manufacturing company that was doing probably $700–800 million a year in sales. He had a direct sales company that was also, talk about grounded, well-grounded, really solid, consistent climb in sales growth over a number of period of years. Has changed the lives of who knows how many people around the world with his technology on the products that they developed. And then I had and it was a fortunate experience for me, to meet this man. I was asked to come in and be their keynote speaker for their year-end convention one year. And they gave me half of the day to teach. I did, and their people just absolutely loved him. He got up on stage right after, and you could tell when he walked. Here's the other thing. When somebody's really the embodiment of success, they have a presence about them. And when you're in the room with them, if you're any kind of a feeler, you will, in fact, they could be standing behind you, you're looking the other way, and their presence is enough
Right.
to get you to turn around. And you might not even be aware of what you're doing,
Right.
but what you're doing is you're feeling someone's strong presence, right? Well, he had that kind of presence. Well, in a moment here, I'm going to tell you why, how he got there. So, but here he is, this successful CEO, manufacturer of like, I don't know, probably 80, 90 other direct sales companies. So in other words, his products are in, and to this day, they're spread in a lot of direct sales companies around the world. He's fairly well known, or was when he was alive. And anyhow, so he comes up on stage. Bottom line is he acknowledges what just happened here over the last 5 hours of the personalized seminar that I did for them or their program that day. And he said to me, Dale, it would be an honor if I could take you out to a 5-star meal. I have a vision for you, he said, and our company. Would you be open to accepting my invitation? I said yes. The whole audience just erupted in applause. Right. Because they knew that, I found this out later, he was very selective on who he said those types of things to.
Right.
But when he said them, they already knew magic was about to happen with this man. And in this case, the magic would be in the partnership that he and I would ultimately create.
Right.
And so in that, we got to know each other. I got to know him on a much deeper level. And it was like a study of mine, because he was my senior. He could have been old enough to be my grandfather at the time.
Right.
So I was just so impressed with this man, even though I'm now the mentor of the company and the success coach of their organization and their teacher and so on and so forth. So I'm thrilled to have this role. I'm thrilled to be in service to him and his organization, but I'm even more thrilled to get to rub shoulders with him and become so close to him.
Right.
I come to find out that none of this was given to him. He actually started in poverty. Had a good set of parents, especially his mom, and but at a very young age, he decided to take a sales job, selling encyclopedias. And the only way he could make a sale, he had to go door to door. And he had more doors slammed in his face, but he wouldn't stop until he got somebody to keep the door open, and then he would do his presentation, and every now and again he would make a sale. And over time he got better at it, and he got better at it. And that's how he put himself through university, because his parents couldn't pay for the university.
Right.
So he went and he self-promoted himself at a very young, tender age to get his schooling. And so when he came out of school, what he didn't realize at the time, he had been living success habits. Because at the time he had no idea that he would become this creator and innovator of not just the technology he brought forth through his manufacturing company, but then also how successful his companies became. And the lives this man touched, the opportunity he brought into people's worlds and just literally leveled them up just because of his business dealings. And that's the point of the story. None of it was handed to him on a silver platter.
Right.
So when you walked in the room and he happened to be there and you felt that presence, he wasn't born with that presence.
Right.
He was a struggling young kid. But what he did know is he had this dogged type determination. And he matched it with this discipline. And discipline, like real good health discipline, as you probably know, is what helps to lay the foundation. Without the discipline, there is no foundation.
Right.
The foundation is just elusive.
Right.
So it's one of the key masterful ingredients. If you're going to get a strong, deep foundation underneath you, you've got to become well disciplined.
Right.
So whatever that means in the person's life. And obviously, he developed that by the age of 24. He was so well disciplined and so well grounded. At the time they lived up the East Coast, and he decided he had this dream one night that he was to move out to the West. He knew nobody out in the West at the time.
Right.
So he made his journey as a young man and started with basically nothing. And over the next 25 years built this empire, and then it just kept on growing from there. And then I was one of those fortunate people that got to cross his path. And you know, he would say I blessed him and his company, but I would say to it right away, that might be true, and you've blessed me times twice.
Right, right. Now, I hear that story, and I was the same in that I came from, my parents didn't give me anything. I had to work for everything that I have, and so I recognized that, and that it was hard. But I think that the lesson here is for when, I know that if I could do it, and I didn't come from anything special,
Yeah.
and I wasn't the smartest. I got terrible grades in high school, and like I got better grades in college because I actually started trying, but I didn't really try early on, and I didn't do well. And then, but what I did do well is I did develop the discipline, and the discipline for me, it came through sports, and it was it was like, I call it torture, because because I was tortured through sports, in that I had to work so hard but my goal and what I wanted was I wanted to be better than, I wanted to be my best version, and I wasn't at the time. I was not at all.
Yeah.
And so, but the fact that I wasn't as good as others made me work harder than them. And so I started working harder, and then it was a matter of like I caught up eventually, but then I was already working way harder than them, way harder than everyone else. And so I not only did I catch up, I just kept going, and I never stopped. I just kept going, and then they ended up falling off, and then all of a sudden I looked like some superhero, like I'm able to achieve things that nobody else can do, and I'm thinking like I'm the same as you. All I did was habits and discipline.
And discipline consistently.
Right, and that's it.
Yeah.
And just consistently doing the things that are, as we call them, like success habits, is just keep doing them and don't stop.
But Trevor, that's what helped to build and deepen the foundation underneath you.
Right.
That's what makes you not better than anybody else, but it does make you different.
Right.
Because we're talking a small percentage on the planet
Mm-hmm.
who has a foundation. This foundation that we've alluded to at least a couple of times now, this foundation is such a key element here.
Right.
That it's one thing to create the success, it becomes a whole other thing to sustain the success.
Right. That's hard.
They're different, as you know.
Right.
Right? But what allows us to sustain it, what empowers us authentically to be able to sustain it, it's all going to determine what kind of foundation you have.
Right.
Britney Spears did not have a good foundation.
Right.
That's where she ended up in the drug rehab how many times?
Yep.
And almost lost her life. There was no foundation. Now perhaps that's all changed because she since has broken away from her family, especially her dad and so on and so forth. And hopefully that's all changed for the better for her.
Mm-hmm.
But here's how it kind of goes. All right, we can only go as high in our success to the depth in which we've gone with our foundation that resides underneath us.
That's interesting.
Think of a building.
Right.
So let's speak practically again, right? On a real practical level. I mean, if you have two buildings, one building is 5 stories high, and the other building is 55 stories high.
Mm-hmm.
Now consider the foundation underneath those two buildings.
It's got to be a lot deeper.
A lot deeper.
Right.
Or otherwise, if we get a massive windstorm, what's going to happen?
Topple right over.
It's going to topple.
Right.
Right? Now, obviously, the architects and the designers, they've now learned this over the years,
Mm-hmm.
or discovered this, so they build accordingly. They create and build accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line is, when they're building a big hotel that's, going to be 80 stories high or 55 stories high,
Mm-hmm.
we don't see this because it's all underground. But they'll spend 2 to 3 years doing what?
Digging deep.
Digging deep.
Right.
Because they've already decided how high they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And they know there's a direct relationship between how high you want to go and how deep you need to go.
Right.
Or otherwise, you're going to end up with a whole other problem down the way that could literally devastate you and possibly get you to destroy some other part of your life.
Right.
Because it becomes so overwhelming because you lose the entire thing.
Right.
Right? So, again, as I always say with success, I have a number of different classes on success under different titles. But I say the bottom line is it's that foundation, and then what lays the foundation is what you just said, or what I said earlier to that, what you just shared about yourself, is it's that consistent discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a consistent discipline to identify what the right habit is
Mm-hmm.
that naturally matches to the success that we desire, and build that habit.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to take consistent discipline.
Right.
There's no quick fix here. as you know. But if you're willing to do the work, as obviously you have so wonderfully articulated and shared with us here today, if you're willing to do the work, again, it doesn't make you super special, doesn't make you better than anybody else, but it will put you ahead of everyone else in terms of your success.
Yeah.
Because your foundation is not only being established, but now you're going deeper, because every time you identify another habit that's right for you, that's in alignment with the success that you so desire, and you consistently discipline yourself to develop that habit, turn that habit into a lifestyle, your foundation goes a little deeper, which means you can go a little higher in whatever level of success that you so desire.
And it's interesting you say that, because I'm like, in the last few years, I've been identifying these different habits, and the habits and the discipline has been like the mainstay of everything. And I know that it's like I think of it like planting seeds.
Yeah.
And I plant a seed, and the disciplines that you can do, you can develop your body, your mind, your whatever you want. You just have to do consistent things.
Yes.
And if you can do those consistent things, you can create anything. But in speaking to entrepreneurs, they want to outsource everything.
Yeah.
And that's really the big part. Like when I started my businesses, I knew that to outsource anything, you have to master it first.
Yes.
And so I learned, how to build websites, I learned how to advertise, I learned how to do, create marketing material, and I read all these books, so I knew. And then once I know, now I can give the job to somebody else, and I know that they're going to do a good job because I know what they're doing.
See?
And I think that the big problem comes now with these entrepreneurs are like, I don't know how to build a website, so I'm going to pay someone else $5,000 to do it. And then when they give it to them and they don't do a good job, they're not even sure why they didn't do a good job. I don't know. I got screwed here, and then they start to feel a certain way about themselves, like they're being taken advantage of, and then they feel sorry. Then they become the victim, and then when you're a victim, you're not going to be successful.
No, but to that, speaking of success, because I know you're reading Transform Your Destiny, my second book, and in Transform Your Destiny, as you get a little further along in the book, you're going to see I have a whole chapter on there, what's called soul themes. So I'm really a big cheerleader for the soul.
Right.
In fact, I'm considered a master teacher of the soul.
Right.
I'm in love with the soul. I know a lot about the soul. I know a lot about individual soul. I know a lot about collective soul. I know a lot about oversoul. And quite frankly, my greatest work when I work with a company or individual or a couple or a partnership is helping to dial them into what I just kind of alluded to.
Yeah.
And then when we start to make changes on those levels in a way that's in alignment with the soul, magic happens.
Right.
Every single time,
Right.
at least in my world.
Right.
It's magic. And so, but in this, there is this dynamic of going back to the foundation, that if I don't have that foundation, or I'm not focused on the foundation, which really means I don't have the lifestyle yet. So if I don't have the lifestyle, and all of a sudden I wake up one morning and I find out I won $1 billion, okay, well now I'm going to have the lifestyle.
Right.
Well, according to the data, the majority of people never do get the lifestyle.
Right.
Because they never earned the lifestyle.
Right.
They never developed the lifestyle prior to the big windfall, so to speak. And so, in light of the different directions we can go in with this larger body of work around success, success is something that ultimately we all deserve. So when we look at the soul themes now, success in relation to success that I was alluding to with Transform Your Destiny is that there's a number of soul themes. So every soul that's born into this world has at least 1 to 3 soul themes. And these themes have already been created. You can avoid them, you can resist them, you can pretend they don't exist, then you just further bury them, but the bottom line is they'll keep on resurfacing in your day-to-day life, somehow, some way. Right? And there's a number of soul themes that there's a number of themes in which the soul can pick from in terms of what's right for the soul in light of what the soul ultimately wants to accomplish.
Right.
So when we were talking about the goal before, it's not so much the goal, it's not even so much about the success, believe it or not. It's who do you need to become in order to achieve the goal.
Right.
Who do you need to become in order to enjoy that level of success?
Right.
Right? And so to that, the soul already knows this because your soul carries a fair amount of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Some souls carry more wisdom than others, but every soul carries at least some aspect of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that place of wisdom, the soul then decides anywhere from 1 to 3 soul themes. If you're an older soul and have even more wisdom, the soul might decide on as many as 5 themes.
Right.
But these themes are very unique because they dictate, they're like drivers.
Mm-hmm.
They're like drivers at the level of our soul that drives us towards the theme constantly.
Right.
So one of the themes is the soul saboteur. Now get this. So if by chance the soul already senses that you're going to do something where you're going to advance too quickly,
Mm-hmm.
prematurely, to where now you're going to push on your success, you're that make it happen kind of guy or kind of gal,
Right.
you're going to push your way there instead of develop your way there or build your way there, like we've been talking about. So now you're there. You won the $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you. But you don't yet have the habits.
Right.
You don't yet have the lifestyle.
Right.
So now what happens? You not only potentially sabotage yourself, but in the process of sabotaging yourself, you possibly cause damage.
Mm-hmm.
You might hurt other people. You might even hurt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You might go out and get drunk one night and have your family in the car get into a serious car wreck.
Right.
And you get it from there.
Right.
Well, here's the soul now. The soul set it up already in advance. There's going to be a theme of saboteur. In other words, if you move too prematurely, something will get triggered from within you at soul level to sabotage something in your world that you happen to really value as a way to grab your attention
Right.
and then to point you in the right direction. Like cause you to do a course correct,
Right.
like the pilot does in the airplane.
Right.
A course correction is up now for me or for you or for whoever,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so now the actual act of this self-sabotaging behavior that's been triggered by the soul,
Mm-hmm.
now it can serve a purpose. It can serve a higher and greater purpose. The higher and greater purpose is to grab your attention,
Right.
to like shake you loose,
Redirect you.
and then reroute you,
Yeah.
course correct you,
Yeah.
because you're on a path right now that's not going to land in a good place, even though you're so convinced
Right.
that's going to land in a good place. Just give me the $1 billion.
Right.
And I'll show you what kind of life I could have, right?
Right.
But you haven't earned your way yet
Right.
to actually have that kind of life, at least just yet.
Yeah. No, this theme has come up in my life, and I talk about this, how it's like sometimes, like, first of all, you have to have faith that everything happens for a reason.
Yes.
And so then if you believe that everything happens for a reason, when something bad happens, the belief has to be, well, this is happening for a reason, for a purpose, to guide
Yes.
me in a different direction. And so with my story, when I was younger, I ended up, I was working in orthopedic surgery, and I liked my job. It was sports medicine, and I'm an athlete, so that it seemed to fit. But something happened, and I ended up getting laid off from this position, and I couldn't find another job. And I thought it was the end of the world. My wife was pregnant, I had a mortgage to pay, and I was freaking out. I didn't know what to do. And then it just easily, everything fell right into place, and I found this new position doing liposuction, which I didn't even know what it was, but I just fell right into it, and it just fell into my lap, and I just happened to be really good at it. Whatever I had been doing in the past, the hard work, the discipline, it was all preparing me for this opportunity. In fact, I find myself stuck in my habits, stuck in my discipline, working really hard, and I lose sight of where I'm going sometimes. But then once I get there, I realize I've been preparing for something for years,
Yes.
and I'm ready for this, and I didn't even know what I was really preparing for. And now I'm coming into a different part of my life, and I've been preparing for years for this opportunity to speak and to bring out what is within me, and now I'm ready, and now it's time, and here we are.
And here we are. You'll love this, Lincoln,
Mm-hmm.
one of our greater presidents
Mm-hmm.
in our history here in our country, to quote him, which I've quoted this particular quote thousands of times throughout the years, here's what he wrote and would talk about from time to time. And he used it more in a personal sense.
Mm-hmm.
right? He made it very personal. I must prepare, I must develop, for one day my chance will come.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if you think of his life, and you think of all the rejection he went through,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a tremendous amount of rejection in a short span of his lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And yet look at what he accomplished.
Right.
Look at what he rose to.
Right.
Was that by accident?
Of course not.
No, exactly.
Right.
And did his soul have something to do with it? Absolutely.
Right.
His soul set it up. And so, but Lincoln was obviously a more sensitive man as well.
Mm-hmm.
He was tough and incredibly courageous. Probably one of the most courageous souls we've ever come across,
Mm-hmm.
right? In terms of working on behalf of serving the many,
Right.
as in our country, and for that matter, even the world. But that was one of his values.
Yeah.
He knew that he needed to keep on preparing. He knew he needed to keep on developing, and he had to do it relentlessly,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because he knew that one day his chance will come. And if you go and you really study, you'll see that at some later point he touches on that would be one of the most devastating things to happen. Of course, he had a lot of devastation in his life with his kids dying early and his wife going kind of crazy a little bit, if you recall the storyline,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of what he experienced. But he also would say, if there was anything that was incredibly devastating, it would be opportunity comes knocking on your door
Not ready.
and you're not ready.
Yep.
You didn't do the work.
Yep.
Your soul was inspiring you to move in that direction. Your soul was even helping to sabotage you in certain ways, but not from the place to curse you, rather from the place to bless you, because it was to be a reroute.
Right.
It was to be a course correct. You weren't on the right path. You weren't doing the right thing. You needed to be over here, developing, building, turning what you're ultimately going to become into a lifestyle,
Right.
so that when it shows up on your doorstep, just as you just said, I now feel ready.
Yeah. Yeah, that has been an amazing theme in my life, in that, like I almost have this fear of there's always been opportunity.
Yeah.
I've always seen opportunity, but if you're not ready to take advantage of the opportunity, the interesting thing with my situation is that the opportunity for this other position I would have never even considered unless I gotten laid off. Never. I would never consider switching fields, never, because I was happy where I was. But unless I would have gotten laid off, which to me was the worst thing ever, but then retrospect, it was the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I speak and try to inspire and motivate others, and realize that whatever's happening now that you think is bad, it's just setting you up for what's next. And if it hurts you enough, it'll inspire and motivate you to work your ass off to get to that next level. And if it doesn't inspire you and motivate you, then you won't. And it's that easy.
Yeah, or even that simple. I guess you could break it down to that level of simplicity that, so you're being laid off. So again, the saboteur.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the soul coming in to actually sabotage something.
Right.
Not as a way to curse you, it's a way to bless. Now, you can still sabotage yourself, and it could end up being a curse.
Right.
Right? Because you make such a mess of everything. Right? But that's a more unconscious type sabotage. In light of what you just shared, and is interesting, here we are talking about one of the soul themes, the theme of saboteur. So the theme of saboteur, when the soul says enough, because it's time to be rerouted, the soul can move in, believe it or not, and next thing you know, you're getting laid off or you're getting fired.
Right.
And you're like, oh gosh, and you're freaking out possibly, unless you're really dialed into your own soul. If you're dialed into your own soul and you know what your themes are, as in your soul themes, and if you happen to have this soul saboteur, wait a minute, is this the work of my soul? Meaning, am I being blessed right now? Or am I being rerouted right now? I just can't see it yet. I can't see exactly where this is going to land.
Right.
And that's where now the faith would come into play, where the trusting would come into play. Wait a minute, no, there's something really good that's going to come out of this.
Yeah.
Right? And then the last piece of that is, I have a quote from my first book, Being Called to Change, and it goes like this, speaking of the soul. Again, whatever challenges us has already been designed to change us at and from soul level. So being called to change, which is the title of my first book, as I said, right? What does that mean? Well, we are all to be changing. In fact, it's in the natural order of things.
Right.
Well, then why aren't many of us changing? Well, the soul will come in, and I often refer to it as a knock. It'll be a subtle knock,
Right.
where a gentle, subtle knocking on your doorstep, so to speak, where it says, Dale, Trevor, it's time to change.
Right.
Well, change what? Then you need to probe it. Like, what is it that your soul is bringing to your attention that it's time for you to change? Could be change direction. Could be change relationship. Could be change career.
Right.
Could be change an old habit. Dismantle an old habit for a new habit. It could be to let go of a limiting belief and replace it with an unlimited belief.
Right.
And on and on and on it goes, whatever it is. But this is to be in the natural order of things, this idea of changing. So one of the ways in how the soul increases the odds to get us ultimately to change, because that's what the soul wants. The soul wants us to be in a state of embracing change, because it's only when you and I are in a state of embracing change, that's where we experience the most amount of growth.
Right.
And that's ultimately what the soul wants. The soul wants the growth. It wants the expansion. It wants to expand itself, right? It's like, and that's what would be natural to it. However, if we're not taking heed to the knocking on the door, in other words, we can't even hear it,
Right.
or maybe we do hear it, but we then are going to ignore it, right? Well, then what happens? On the heels of that comes the challenge.
Right.
There'll be something that'll show up in our life, it'll manifest out of nowhere, and we'll probably say to one of our friends, I don't know what this is so intense, this is just so challenging, I don't even know if I can get through this.
Right.
Guess what? That's the work of that person's soul.
Right.
That they're specifically now have helped or co-helped to manifest a specific challenge that's going to be intense enough, whatever that means, for each person to be different, painful enough, heavy enough, whatever that means, as a way to get them to see that the challenge has already been designed at and from soul level for us to step into what the soul wants us to change in our lives, in the way we're living our lives.
Yeah.
Personally, professionally, entrepreneurially wise, financially wise, relationally wise, on any and all levels possibly.
It's interesting because, I mean, like some of these decisions that need to be made, you know, the soul makes them for you. So,
Yeah.
so like you know, they let me go for my job. I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
They let me go, and it wasn't a bad thing. It was just, you know, it was something that was just, it was time for a switch.
Yes.
And so, you know, I think that a lot of people, they see these things as a negative, and they perceive it as a negative. Then they act like it's a negative.
Yes.
And then when you do that, it becomes negative to you. And if you can see this as a positive or a potential positive, and that everything's good. If you can see everything is ultimately good, so it's ultimately leading you in a different direction. And if you can see that, then you can start looking for how that could happen. And I think that, you know, when you're in the thick of things, it doesn't feel that way. It certainly doesn't feel that way. And it may not feel that way for years after incidents sometimes, until you can start to see a little bit more clearly of why things happen the way they do. But I've never been really a religious person, but I found the word faith, and it really resonated with me, in that you just have to believe that things are going to be good, and that your life is supposed to be good, as you know, on some level. But you have to allow things to happen.
Well, and that's the definition of faith.
Yeah.
Faith is the act of actually believing in something that's higher, something that's truer, something that where you choose to place your trust in, that somehow this has all already been designed, and ultimately it's going to work out for the better.
Right.
The entire enchilada. But during that process, as you just talked about, it can be downright uncomfortable.
Right.
Remember the growing pains?
Right.
Because now you're potentially being dropped into a growth pattern, right? So there's going to be some growing pains. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to stir up all kinds of stuff inside of us, not all at once, but little by little, slowly but surely, all depending on how you go about working with this stuff.
Right.
How do you work with yourself? Again, going back, do you have a coach in your corner? Do you have a guide? Do you have somebody, a confidant? Do you have someone that can maintain a level of objectivity and neutrality in that of you?
Right.
Because when you're in it, good luck in remaining objective or neutral.
Right. That's tough.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
But when you have somebody that you trust and you look up to and you can count on, so to speak, and also knows what they're doing, right? That's a really important piece there. Well, then all of a sudden you can better navigate through that experience.
Right.
And because that person's there to help illuminate or to help you to see what might really be going on versus what you think is going on, so you can better embrace this process that is underway from within you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, change is never comfortable. And I think that when people start experiencing the discomfort, a lot of them get scared. And I think that we've all, like our society has programmed us to seek comfort and to seek things to be easy. And a lot of the commercialism now is of services meant to make your life easier and more convenient. So people kind of have this natural thought that that's the way life is, or it should be, and I should be seeking that. And my mindset has been completely opposite. I've purposely made things more challenging for myself because I knew that the challenges made me stronger. I knew that, and so I would always, they say that the water flows in the path of least resistance. Yeah. And when I'm out in the world, even as simple like going for a hike, I would always take the most challenging. Yeah. The most I just always did, and people like my wife's like, why are you doing that? That's so stupid. Then don't do it.
Absolutely.
But I know what I'm becoming
yeah.
by doing these challenging things. I know that if I do something challenging and it's hard physically, if I achieve it, now I feel like that was easy. Yeah. I can do it again. And the same thing applies to every other aspect of my life. I try to do the most challenging things, and when I am able to do it, it gives me the confidence. And as you say, it's like you earn it, right? And when you earn it, you feel a different way about it.
Oh, big time.
And you can keep it.
You keep it because now you own it. You're now in ownership of whatever that is.
And if I lose it, I can do it again.
Well, if you lose it externally, I would say internally. Right. Once you get it internally, you can't lose it.
Right.
Not once you embody it.
Right.
Or earn/embody. But externally, so let's say you have a lot of money in your bank account, you lose it. That's the beauty. Is if you really have earned it, then it already comes with a knowing. And what might I be able to create next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like the biggest. It allows you to relax.
Yeah.
Man, if the economy's bad and if my businesses fail, like okay, well then I'll just start a new one. I'll do something different. I've done it before, and it wasn't easy, but I can do it again, and I know that I can do it way faster because I won't have to make the same mistakes anymore.
Yeah.
And that's that knowing just gives you the peace of mind.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people that don't have that knowing, that's where the fear comes. It's I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, remember the foundation?
Right.
So the core element of the foundation is how much do you really know about you?
Mm-hmm.
You remember the movie The Matrix,
mm-hmm.
the first one? Remember when Neo is with the Oracle the first time?
Yeah.
And she points him to what's above the archway in the door?
Right.
Do you remember what's up there?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, so it's done in Greek, but it ultimately translates to know thyself.
Right.
But how do you come to know yourself? Well, first of all, is it one moment in time and all of a sudden you know everything about you?
Right.
And at least we don't know of anybody, who has been able to accomplish it that way. But what we do know, there are others who have gone before us, and there are others who are traveling along with us right now, who have deepened their knowing of who it is that they already really are, or who it is that they've now become.
Right.
And the deeper that knowing goes, the deeper the foundation goes. The deeper the foundation goes, the higher the high rise can be.
Right.
Out here externally.
Right.
And if the high rise gets leveled, you got the foundation, not only can you go build again,
right,
but you can build rather quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of the knowing you have inside of you.
When you say that, like knowing who you are, for me, this is what my understanding has been that, I know that I am the one that creates everything.
Yes.
And so once I knew that, then all of the external things, that the three-dimensional trappings of money and success, and if I want that stuff, it's just a matter of I create it.
Yes.
And it's not, and then if I lose it, it's okay because I can just create it because I'm the creator.
Yes.
I'm the one that made it in the first place. Even all these personalities, my friends, my family, these are the relationships that I created.
Yeah.
And they're so to speak, my possessions,
Yes.
right? But if we lose our possessions, I just, if I lost this shirt, I'll just go get another shirt, right? It's just a shirt.
Exactly.
Same thing. It's like money is just money. If I lose it, I'll just go get some more.
Exactly.
And so I've realized who I am and what I'm capable of, and that gives me the confidence to do whatever I want to do and become whatever I want to become.
Yes. That, again, is the foundation.
Right.
Or where you're at with your foundation, which allows you, it authentically empowers you to be able to live the life that you're currently living.
Right.
It also empowers you to be able to level up if you want, at any point you want to level up again.
Yeah.
Or expand in whatever area of your life you want to expand yourself in.
Right.
At soul level, especially when you're always including the soul, right? Or dialing into your soul, really connecting with your soul, establishing a relationship with your soul, deepening the relationship with your soul, because your soul it's the core part of who you really are. And so the deeper that goes, the richer life becomes, not just financially.
Right.
But, going back to the first question you asked me about definition of success. So here's another definition of success. Not everybody's at this level just yet, but some people are. And this definition is, my definition of success is to be able to go to bed at night totally and completely at peace with myself and everything in my own personal universe. For when I do, I sleep like a baby.
Right.
Every single night. And when I wake up in the morning, I wake up refreshed. I wake up with an extra energy, a pure, clean energy to start my wonderful next day with.
Right.
Well, how many people do you know that can honestly say that for the last 30 nights, they went to bed and felt completely at peace with themselves and their own personal worlds, and just drifted off into a deep, deep sleep?
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like I sleep well, and I don't have that's not something that I complain about. The sleeping is not an issue, and I believe that the reason that is because I'm at peace with things, and I understand that I don't have to have fear, and I don't have to worry, I don't have to have anxiety. I just don't have that, and it doesn't exist in my being.
Well, you're in that category because I wouldn't say there's a lot of people like that on the planet, at least in my experience thus far.
Right.
But there are a number of who that's how they define success. That's their highest definition of success. Is, am I going to bed at night at peace
Right.
with not just myself, but everybody in my world, and including my wife or husband?
Right.
Or am I going to bed angry tonight? Am I going to bed filled with resentment? Or I've got one negative thought after another negative thought running rampant in my mind?
Right.
That's not peace.
Yeah.
So, but what I have learned, or what I've come to appreciate, is that is a level of appreciation. It's a level of appreciation we have for self, or our relationship to our soul, or to God, to the universe, to the divine, that, my gosh, everything I've been through, and now I'm seeing success even differently now. Because I know success externally can come and go.
Right.
But peace, to honestly and genuinely say, I've achieved a state of inner peace. So no matter what's going on in my world, I'm living my life in this state of peace, and it shows itself every single day. At the end of the day, where I'm able to go to bed at night, naturally, organically, just feeling so peaceful,
Right.
which then sets a stage for gratitude.
Right.
And gratitude is one of the most powerful magnetics for attracting more success to ourselves. Is when we're living in a state of gratitude. Well, those two go hand in hand.
Right.
If you don't have peace, the only way you can get gratitude, you've got to work at it. Right? You got to really work at it.
Right.
But when you get the peace, as you already know, gratitude just naturally flows.
Right.
You find yourself just naturally, without even trying, feeling grateful for your partner, feeling grateful for your life, feeling grateful for what happened today, or the person you just met,
Right.
or the person you now know that's becoming a dear friend, or whatever it is. You're just naturally filled with gratitude.
Yeah.
You're not trying to be grateful anymore.
Right.
You're now grateful.
Yeah. And I think that this stuff, I mean, for me, it's developed over time.
Yeah.
And the weird thing to me is like, you focus on the disciplines, you focus on the work. You work hard, you do the disciplines, you do what is going to help you to grow and expand.
Yeah.
And if you just keep focused on that, it's like I had this analogy, like I just put my head down and just worked and just did what I felt was the right thing to do, and just keep doing it and don't look up. Just keep plowing away forward. Then all of a sudden you realize that when you look up, you've already surpassed everyone, and you're like, where is everyone up here? And so when they say, it's lonely at the top, that made sense to me because I looked around, I was like,
Kind of is.
where's everyone else?
Yes, right.
They stopped running.
Yes.
They stopped working so hard. They stopped pushing, and it's like
Yes.
people reach some level and they say, okay, this is enough. And it's not that I said it was enough, it was just I kept having challenges, and I kept having things that pushed me to the next level, and I didn't focus on the trappings that we get for having success.
Yeah.
The money, the materials, or whatever. I didn't focus on that stuff. I was focused on just keep getting better, and as I say, becoming your best version. And if you're focused on becoming your best version, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. And it is just a matter of time. The only word that I would add to that is it's a building process.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I know a lot of people now, as they become more conscious, they're not crazy about the word pushing, right? Because pushing implies it's a more older way of showing up. They watch somebody in their life always pushing,
Right.
and never really got anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in all fairness, they probably weren't well disciplined, and they probably weren't all that conscious, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So what I found is that it's more of a process of like you're building something within inside yourself. So if you go with that idea that you're building that foundation is one of the, if it's not the master key, it's clearly one of the top 3 master keys
Mm-hmm.
to having a real rich life, a rich existence.
Right.
And again, I'm not just speaking financially, right? Just rich,
Mm-hmm.
It's the foundation. So many of the things that we've discussed here today will help you to do just that,
Mm-hmm.
as in the discipline, as in that working for it or earning it or ultimately becoming the embodiment of it, deciding who it is you want to become and then working towards that and becoming that, building the inner muscles that it's going to take in order to become that,
Mm-hmm.
which also means building, strengthening, deepening that foundation, learning more about yourself,
Right.
deepening your knowledge, as in self-knowledge. Marcus Aurelius would often talk about this when he was alive, right? Self-knowledge, like who are you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you really think you're this,
Right.
right? This body, like when you stand in front of a mirror, like in modern day now,
Mhm.
you stand in front of a mirror and you see the reflection of your body. Is that who you think you are?
Right.
Like some people have fallen into the trap and they don't even know it's even a trap,
Mm-hmm.
and they spend so much time in front of that mirror, right? Thinking that's who they are.
Right.
And nothing could be further from the truth. You are far more than, it is your body, no doubt
Right.
about it, and you probably want to have your body be presentable, and you want to definitely care for it, and
Mhm.
take good care of it, no doubt about it, but that's not who you are. You're much more than that.
Right.
And it's deep, it's rich, it's expansive, and quite frankly, it's also infinite.
Mm-hmm.
So even as much as you become who you've become, what I've come to appreciate, if you continue, you're going to become even something more.
Right.
At least I've never, when somebody's really on this path, this higher pathway, it never stops.
Right.
You're constantly becoming more.
Right.
And that's why I often say you're becoming more of who it is you really are, because when you really understand, I'm talking about physically, cellular, understand who it is that you really are,
Mm-hmm.
and how large you are, and how powerful you are, and how unique you are, again, at soul level. This is the part of you that never dies.
Mm-hmm.
Your body might die, your ego will die,
Right.
or die off, but you, as in the real you, or the real us, we don't die,
Right.
right? We continue on, whatever that means for us, but we continue on. So the great challenge in life, if you go back to Socrates and Plato and some of the masters before they even walked the face of this earth,
Mm-hmm.
the most perplexing question has been, who are you?
Right.
For real.
Hmm.
And how deep is your knowing into who you are?
Right.
How expansive is your knowing into who you really already are?
Mm-hmm. You know, I had this recent this lesson in Kriya Yoga. They talked about Paramahansa Yogananda.
Yes.
And he says, you know, let's assume that we are an accumulation of that which we consume, whether it's the food that you know, the nutrients turn
Yes.
into our body, right? So we're accumulating this body through the food and things that we're inputting, and then the mind is accumulating ideas, thoughts, memories, right? So our mind, who we believe we are from the mind perspective, is really just an accumulation of what we picked up over the years, right?
Yes.
So do you agree with that?
I would.
Most people would agree with that. And so if we stay with this, we are an accumulation, then if I go out on a walk and I pick something up, and I pick another things up, and I'm accumulating things, I would never, ever say those things that I picked up are me. I would never say that. But yet, we say that this body and this mind is me. It's who I am. This is what people identify with as the body and the mind. And the reality is those are just the things we picked up along this life. And it's not really us.
Exactly.
And so, in realizing this blows your mind, right?
Well, another example, yeah, it does. Another example a real example. Do you remember the movie, the documentary Super Size Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, accumulation,
Mm-hmm.
picking something up, ingesting something in your system.
Mm-hmm.
So he decided to live on McDonald's,
Right.
and he wanted to go for a full 30 days just to see what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you recall the documentary, by the time he got into day 16 or 17, somewhere around there, he started developing problems. By the time he got into day 21, day 23, you could see that his skin color was starting to flush. He was going
Right.
pale.
Right.
He was getting weaker. He was losing it emotionally. So who was he becoming?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you go back, so I don't know if you remember what happened on day 27 or day 29, and where now he was in an emergency situation, a crisis situation, but he still hadn't abandoned the diet.
Right.
Talk about commitment, talk about discipline.
Right.
He stayed true to that thing for a full 30 days,
Mm-hmm.
and it almost killed him.
Mm-hmm.
It almost killed him. So who was he becoming? He was becoming death.
Right.
Right?
You do the habits that are consistent with it. That's what you turn into, right?
Exactly. So he was becoming, and you know, I thought that was so. First of all, it was an act of bravery. I know some people thought it was very stupid that he did what he did,
Mm-hmm.
but he was on a mission. He was on a mission to see if he could help people to get a better understanding of what it's like if you consume something in your physical system
Mm-hmm.
on a regular basis that might taste good, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
but might not be beneficial for your system. Over time, it will accumulate, as you just mentioned, the accumulation, and over time, then it's going to cause something to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that something that it causes to happen is now who you become.
Right.
So now you become a sick old man,
Mm-hmm.
even though at the time I think he was only 30-some years of age
Right.
when this was all going down years
Right.
ago. But yet by the time he was done, you could see the aging process was progressing.
Mm-hmm.
He was no longer even looking his age.
Right.
His eyes were, I mean, they were all black and blue
Sunken in,
and
right.
sunken in. I mean, his tongue, if you know, I pay attention, again, I pay attention to all kinds of things, so I'm trained to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And as a way to help people to help them to better understand what they're perhaps working with. But I mean, he put his life on the line
Mm-hmm.
in order to fulfill his mission, because he was on a mission, there's no doubt about it. He was very clear on that.
Right.
And he wanted this to be an act of service to humankind. And to this day, it's still serving people.
Yeah.
It's still helping to wake people up
Right.
to not so much McDonald's, but the idea, like, check yourself.
Right.
Check yourself. What are you putting into your body?
Mm-hmm.
Because what you're putting in your body over time is somehow going to affect you either negatively or positively.
Mm-hmm.
Positively, because of that accumulation principle. And then next thing you know, you become that.
Right.
You become that sickness. You
Right.
become that disease, or you become that health.
Mm-hmm.
You become that vibrance, that radiance,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that might be.
And I think a lot of people are doing that, not to the extent of eating McDonald's every day, but they're doing some form of that. Where they're consuming the stuff that's like this. It's like, you know, the three pigs are building their house on the sand and you know, and then with a stone or whatever. You know, basically you're building your house that's going to fall apart.
That's gonna fall apart.
Right? And so I think that many
Yeah.
of us, we do these habits that we're basically building our foundation, as you say, in a way that is just not solid.
Absolutely.
And you're not setting yourself up, and you're setting yourself for like a straw house that's just going to get blown over as soon as the first turbulence comes around.
Or also known as big obstacle or challenge or hurdle or problem or whatever that might be.
And then they'll call themselves the victim, right?
Yeah.
Because they never prepared. They never built the solid brick house that was preparing for their future. They built this thing that it was fun, right? It was easy, and then they end up suffering the consequences.
Well, I know we got to wrap up here soon, but again, going back to the soul themes that I highlighted in Transform Your Destiny, my book.
Mm-hmm.
So another soul theme is the theme of the victor. And if you've got the soul theme of the victor, it means you have its opposite. And the opposite of the victor would be the
loser.
The loser or the victim.
Right, the victim.
The victim. So if you've got that as a theme, then at least some part of your life, you're going to be driven by the victim. So you're literally creating things, manifesting things, that's going to get you to say out loud, I feel like I've been victimized.
Right.
And sometimes if you just pay attention to the words that people use to describe themselves or describe situations in their life, it's victim this, victim that. Right. Sometimes people walk like a victim. There's a certain kind of walk in terms of your physiology. Your physiology will show whether or not you're really driven by that victim archetype. But just know that if this is going on for you, that what that means is you do have the soul theme of the victor.
Right.
So that
you want to
means
succeed.
You're to be victorious.
Right.
But to be victorious, you're going to have to go through the victim.
Right. That's interesting.
You can't bypass it.
Right.
You got to go through it, and to go through it means you got to become conscious of when you're doing the victim thing. You got to become conscious. You got to recognize, there I am again. Did you hear what just came out of my mouth? I just literally sounded like I'm a victim.
Right.
Like poor little unfortunate me. What am I doing?
Right.
That's not the real me. The real me is powerful.
Right.
The real me is creative. The real me is innovative. The real me is wise.
Right.
That's not the real me, but yet it's a part of me, as in some aspect of my lower self, which uniquely enough, the lower self is where the victim archetype lives. The victor archetype lives in the higher aspect of you.
Right.
So, as you learn about in my book on Transform Your Destiny, and by the way, if you want more information on Transform Your Destiny, you can go to my main website, dalehalaway.com.
Okay.
Dale Halaway, and you spell Halaway Halaway,
Right.
dalehalaway.com.
And I know the books are also available because I like to listen to books, so they're available on any of the places that you listen, right?
Yeah, on Audible, and of course, and you can get the book on Amazon as well, and other different, actually wherever books are sold, you'll find Transform Your Destiny. But we do have a little piece on there on the website, dalehalaway.com, and in there, if this happens to be your theme or one of your themes, because remember there's a variety of themes that the soul picks from, and we have at least 1 to 3, maybe as many as 5, and if this happens to be yours, and you can recognize it because, I don't know, your husband just said the other day, like, are you being a victim again? We've been together for 17 years.
Right.
And there you are again doing that victim thing. You're not a victim. Or the husband might say to the wife, are you victimizing me right now? Right? Or something to that effect. Right? Where, because the victim, the opposite side of that exact same coin of the victim is the victimizer. So the victim is either being victimized or sometimes can do a shift and they end up victimizing someone else.
Right.
Either through just being overly reactive all over them, I mean, not getting physical, but just reactive with their words or their emotions, that type of thing. So, but if you recognize this as a theme, meaning the victim, that's usually how you catch it.
Right.
I don't know if many people catch it on the victor level. That when it's first brought to their attention, their consciousness, they're like, I think I have that one. I think that's one of my soul themes. This is amazing. And it starts to resonate, starts to ring true for them on the inside. Right? That's their soul letting them know, pay attention, this is one of them, right? But usually they mostly relate to the victim, not just yet the victor.
Right.
Because they have to do some work with the victim for a short little while, and then at some point they start to relate to the victor, because wherever there's a victim archetype within somebody's lower consciousness, there's the higher archetype known as the victor within their higher level of consciousness. You cannot have one without the other.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so, but as you, remember we were talking about transmutation in our last episode,
Yeah.
the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. So if you're really dialed in now, you know how this works, right? And now you kind of get a little bit excited and start hopeful, like, could I clear this out of my system? And the answer is yes. Because what you're doing is you're going to transmute it, not all at once, little by little, slowly but surely over time. You're going to transmute the energy of the victim consciousness that's residing within the lower part of your consciousness, or your lower self, it's also known as. You're going to transmute that energy into its higher form. The higher form is already there.
Right.
But how do you access it? And more specifically, how do you embody it?
Right.
How do you embody it to where you get the victor literally invading, pervading every single cell of your beingness? Because once you pull that off, now life becomes one victory after another.
Right.
It's no more the victim.
Yep.
It's now victory. So whatever you put your mind to, whatever you decide intentionally wise to do,
Right.
you'd be amazed at what you're able to accomplish.
Yeah.
Pleasantly surprised.
Well, I know, in losing a lot, you figure out how to win.
That's another way of looking at it, yes.
You know?
Another way to go to get to the winning.
Yep. It's almost like you figure out all the ways to not win.
Yes.
And there's only other one way to go.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And, there's
Well said.
stories of these success stories in the past of I think it was Benjamin Franklin or the guy from KFC. They say
Colonel Sanders?
Yeah, they fail so many times,
Oh, yeah.
thousands of times, and then finally they figure it out. The guy from McDonald's.
Ray Kroc.
Yeah, it's the same story. It's like it's over and over and over where they try, they fail, and then eventually it's like there's no other way but to do it this way, and then they have massive success. So, Dale, it's been a long talk here, and we could probably keep going for another couple hours, but
Yeah, sure.
What an amazing talk today. I feel like I feel much more successful myself. So thank you so much for the time here today. And as we're talking here, I'm thinking the next talk we should discuss in the law of attraction.
Yeah.
And that would be a great subject to discuss. I know that's been
Yeah,
pivotal in my life, and I think helping individuals understand what that means and how they can utilize it for their own success would be a great topic to talk about.
Awesome.
So,
Let's do it.
so thank you again.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
All right.
Gandhi said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world. You must choose to become superhuman." Thank you for listening to this episode of the Becoming Superhuman Podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Schmidt. Be sure to follow our social media channels. We'll see you next time.